Remember when every kid in your school was absolutely obsessed with collecting Pokemon cards? When playground arguments erupted over whether Charizard could beat Blastoise? When you rushed home every Saturday morning to catch the latest episode? The 1990s witnessed one of the most explosive entertainment phenomena in history. But before Pikachu became a global icon, before the trading cards, before the anime, there was one man with a childhood dream and a revolutionary idea. This is the full story of how a Japanese video game about catching imaginary creatures became a global obsession that defined an entire generation. To understand Pokemon, we need to go back to 1960s Japan. A young boy named Satoshi Tajiri grew up in Machida, a suburb of Tokyo. While other kids played inside, Satoshi was obsessed with one thing: catching bugs. He spent hours exploring ponds, fields, and forests, hunting for beetles and insects. He studied them. He collected them. He became so passionate about it that his friends nicknamed him Dr. Bug. But as the 1970s progressed, something changed. The fields where Satoshi caught insects disappeared, paved over by apartment buildings and shopping centers. The ponds became parking lots. His childhood paradise was vanishing. That sense of loss would stay with him forever. In the late 1970s, Satoshi discovered a new obsession: video games. Space Invaders hit Japanese arcades in 1978, and he was hooked. He spent every spare moment playing arcade games, learning everything about them. He even took apart his Famicom console just to understand how it worked. His passion led him to create a handwritten gaming magazine called Game Freak in 1981. The magazine reviewed arcade games and shared secrets and strategies. One issue about the game, Xevious, sold over 10,000 copies. Through Game Freak magazine, Satoshi met Ken Sugimori, an artist who would later design the original 151 Pokémon. By 1989, they'd transformed their magazine into an actual video game company, also called Game Freak. And then, in 1990, everything clicked into place. Satoshi saw something that would change his life and eventually change the world. Two kids playing Game Boys connected by a link cable. As he watched data transfer between the two handheld systems, his imagination sparked. He pictured something crawling along that cable, something alive, insects, creatures, moving from one Game Boy to another. Suddenly, all those childhood memories came flooding back. The thrill of discovering a rare beetle, the excitement of showing your friends what you'd caught, the joy of trading duplicates with other collectors. What if he could recreate that experience? What if modern kids, growing up in cities without fields and ponds, could experience the same magic he'd felt as Dr. Bug? Satoshi pitched his concept to Nintendo. He called it Capsule Monsters, inspired by Japanese gashapon machines and the capsule kaiju from the TV show Ultraman. The Nintendo executives didn't quite understand the idea. A game about catching and collecting creatures using a link cable to trade them? It sounded strange. But Satoshi had built a solid reputation with Game Freak, so Nintendo gave him a chance. They assigned legendary game designer Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of Mario and Zelda, to mentor him. The project had begun. What Satoshi didn't know was that it would take 6 years of grueling work and nearly bankrupt his company before the world would see his vision come to life. February 27, 1996. After 6 years of development that nearly destroyed Game Freak financially, Pokémon Red and Pokémon Green finally launched in Japan for the Game Boy. The Game Boy was already 7 years old by this point, ancient in gaming terms. Many thought it was a dying system. But Satoshi Tajiri's vision was finally real. The games were unlike anything players had experienced before. You started in a small town called Pallet Town, chose one of 3 starter Pokémon, Bulbasaur, Charmander, or Squirtle, and set off on an adventure to become a Pokémon master. You explored routes, caves, and cities, encountering wild Pokémon. You battled them, weakened them, and caught them in Pokeballs. Then you trained them, evolved them, and used them to battle other trainers. But here's where Tajiri's genius truly shone: the link cable trading system. Certain Pokémon could only be obtained by trading with someone who owned the opposite version of the game. Some Pokémon, like Haunter, only evolved when traded. This wasn't just a single-player experience anymore. This was social. This was collaborative. You needed friends. You needed to connect. Sales started slow in Japan, but word of mouth spread. Kids discovered a secret, a hidden 151st Pokémon called Mew that Tajiri had secretly programmed into the game. Rumors exploded. And then, in 1997, the Pokémon anime debuted on Japanese television, bringing these digital creatures to life with color, personality, and adventure. By late 1997, Pokémon was a phenomenon in Japan, and Nintendo of America was watching very carefully. Fast forward to September 1998. Nintendo of America made a bold gamble. They decided to bring Pokémon to the United States, but the Game Boy was already considered old technology by this point. The system had been around since 1989, and many people thought handheld gaming's best days were behind it. Critics questioned whether American kids would embrace a Japanese RPG about cute monsters. How wrong they were. Pokémon Red and Blue, note the color change, for the American market, replacing green with blue, launched in the US in September 1998. Nintendo went all in on marketing, and they had a secret weapon. They launched the video games and the TV anime simultaneously. On September 8, 1998, the Pokémon anime premiered on Kids WB. The same month, the games hit stores. This wasn't coincidence. This was brilliant strategy. Kids would watch Ash Ketchum's adventures on Saturday morning, learning about the world of Pokémon, seeing battles, evolutions, and the bond between trainer and creature. Then they'd pick up their Game Boys to live out their own Pokémon journey. The synergy was perfect. The anime taught kids about the game's mechanics, type advantages, evolution, gym battles, the importance of friendship, while the games let them experience it firsthand. Both the show and games reinforced the same message, the same dream, the same mission: gotta catch 'em all. And American kids were ready to do exactly that. But nothing, and I mean nothing, compared to what happened when Wizards of the Coast released the Pokémon trading card game in January 1999. If you were a kid in 1999, you remember this moment. The cards were everywhere. Every kid had a deck. Every convenience store, every toy shop, every department store had booster packs at the checkout. The rules were simple enough for kids to learn, but deep enough to create real strategy. You built decks around your favorite Pokémon. You attached energy cards. You played trainer cards for special effects. You battled your friends at lunch tables and on playgrounds. And you collected. Oh, did you collect? Common cards, uncommon cards, and those beautiful holographic rare cards that caught the light like nothing else. And then there was the Charizard. The holographic Charizard card from the base set became the most coveted piece of cardboard in the 1990s. That orange fire-breathing dragon with the shimmering foil background wasn't just a card. It was the Holy Grail. Kids traded entire decks for a single Charizard. Parents drove from store to store, hunting for booster packs, hoping to find that one rare pull. The secondary market exploded. That card wasn't just a playing piece. It was status. It was power. It was bragging rights for the entire school year. Schools started banning the cards because kids were getting into fights over trades. Teachers confiscated entire binders. Parents set strict rules about bringing them to school. But nothing could stop Pokemania now. The phenomenon had officially begun. By mid-1999, Pokemon wasn't just popular. It was a cultural phenomenon unlike anything we'd seen before. This was peak Pokemania, and it was absolutely everywhere you looked. Walk into any store, and you'd find Pokemon merchandise. Backpacks, lunchboxes, t-shirts, bedsheets, plush toys, action figures, candy, cereal, toothbrushes, shoes, pajamas. If it could have Pikachu printed on it, it did. The yellow electric mouse became as recognizable as Mickey Mouse practically overnight. Burger King ran a massive promotion with gold-plated Pokemon cards in kids' meals. The demand was so intense that some locations ran out within hours. Parents called multiple restaurants trying to complete their kids' collections. Lines wrapped around buildings. These weren't just Happy Meal toys anymore. These were treasures. The playground economy completely ran on Pokemon. Kids negotiated complex trades during recess. A holographic Blastoise for 2 Raichus and a Machamp. Deals were made. Friendships were tested. Alliances formed and broke. Every recess became a trading floor, and every kid was learning basic economics through Pokemon cards without even realizing it. And the anime? Saturday morning television had never been more important. Kids set alarms to wake up for Pokemon. They knew every character, every attack move, every evolution. Missing an episode meant being left out of Monday morning's conversations at school. And then came November 10th, 1999. Pokémon, the first movie. Mewtwo Strikes Back hit American theaters, and it was an absolute juggernaut. This wasn't just a kids' movie. This was an event. Theater lobbies were packed with children, dressed head to toe in Pokémon gear. Parents bought tickets weeks in advance. The movie opened on over 3,000 screens across America, and kids showed up in droves. Many brought their Game Boys, trading Pokémon in theater lobbies before the show started. Some theaters reported kids coming back multiple times, watching the movie 5, 6, even 10 times. The movie had everything young fans wanted. Epic Pokémon battles that were bigger and more intense than anything the TV show had done. Mewtwo, the most powerful Pokémon ever created, questioning its existence and purpose. Emotional moments that genuinely made kids cry. Yes, that scene where Ash gets turned to stone and all the Pokemon's tears bring him back to life had an entire generation of children sobbing in movie theaters across the country. And of course, promotional tie-ins. Many theaters gave away exclusive ancient Mew cards with ticket purchases, creating even more demand. Kids went to see the movie just to get the card. Pokémon, the first movie, earned over $163 million worldwide, with $85 million coming from the US alone. Critics didn't love it, but critics weren't the audience. Kids were, and kids made it one of the highest-grossing anime films ever released in America at that time. It proved beyond any doubt that Pokémon wasn't a fad. It was a movement. It was a generation-defining phenomenon. Let's talk about what made the games themselves so special. Pokémon Red and Blue weren't just good games. They were revolutionary for their time. The Game Boy was a black-and-white handheld system with simple graphics and beeping sound. But Pokémon proved that gameplay and imagination mattered more than cutting-edge graphics. You started in Pallet Town with a choice that defined everything: Bulbasaur, Charmander, or Squirtle. That choice sparked endless playground debates. Which starter was best? There was no right answer, and that was beautiful. The core gameplay loop was brilliant in its simplicity. Explore routes and caves. Encounter wild Pokémon in tall grass. Battle them to weaken them. Throw a Pokeball and pray you catch them. Then train them up, teach them new moves through TMs and HMs, and watch them evolve into more powerful forms. Every Pokémon had different stats, different types, different move sets. Water beat fire, fire beat grass, grass beat water. But there were 17 types total, creating complex rock-paper-scissors strategy that kept battles interesting for hundreds of hours. And the link cable trading system? Pure genius. Certain Pokémon like Haunter and Graveler only evolved when traded. Others like version exclusives, Ekans in red, Sandshrew in blue, meant you had to know someone with the other game. This transformed gaming from a solo activity into a deeply social experience. Pokémon brought kids together in ways no game had before. Those original 151 Pokémon became icons. Every kid had their favorites, and serious players could recite them all by heart. Pikachu, of course, became the mascot. Cute, powerful, and instantly recognizable with those red cheeks and lightning bolt tail. But there were 150 others, each with their own appeal. The legendary birds, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, were rare encounters that required strategy, patience, and plenty of Ultra Balls to catch. Finding them felt like discovering actual legends. Mewtwo, hidden in the mysterious Cerulean Cave, was the ultimate challenge, the most powerful Pokémon in the game, with a base stat total that dominated everything else. Finding and catching Mewtwo was a badge of honor that only the most dedicated players earned. Then there were the fan favorites everyone loved. Charizard, the fire-breathing dragon that your starter, Charmander, could become. Blastoise, the water cannon turtle with incredible defensive stats. Dragonite, the pseudo-legendary powerhouse that took forever to evolve. Alakazam, with his spoon and incredible psychic powers. Gengar, the mischievous ghost type that could only be obtained through trading. And the weird ones that somehow became beloved anyway. Farfetch'd with his leak weapon. Lickitung with his absurdly long tongue. Ditto, who could transform into any Pokémon it faced. Mr. Mime, who was just unsettling. Every single Pokémon had personality. Every Pokémon had dedicated fans. And serious players tried to catch all 151, filling their Pokédex in pursuit of that gotta catch 'em all dream. Pokémon's impact on 1990s culture went far beyond just entertainment. It fundamentally changed how we thought about gaming, collecting, and media franchises. Before Pokémon, video games were mostly standalone experiences. Pokémon proved that games could be part of something bigger, a transmedia empire spanning TV, movies, cards, toys, and merchandise, all reinforcing each other in a perfect feedback loop. It created a new business model for children's entertainment that companies still follow today. The interconnected nature of the anime, games, and cards meant engagement in one medium naturally led to engagement in others. Watch the show, buy the game, collect the cards, see the movie, buy the toys. It was a brilliant cycle that kept kids constantly engaged with the brand. For kids of the 1990s, Pokémon was genuinely formative. It taught strategy through type matchups and team building, economics through card trading and negotiation, patience through hunting for rare Pokémon and grinding levels, the value of completion through filling the Pokédex, social skills through trading and battling with friends. And it created shared experiences. Everyone at school was playing the same game, watching the same show, collecting the same cards. You had a common language with kids you'd never even met. Parents and teachers didn't always understand the obsession. They saw expensive cards and distracted students, but they couldn't deny the educational benefits. Kids were reading Pokédex entries to learn about their creatures. They were doing mental math calculating damage and weaknesses. They were negotiating, planning, and problem-solving. By the end of 1999, Pokémon had achieved what few entertainment properties ever manage. It became part of the cultural DNA of an entire generation. The late 1990s will forever be remembered as the era of Pokemania, when Pikachu was as famous as any celebrity, when Charizard cards were worth their weight in gold, and when "Gotta catch 'em all" was more than a slogan. It was a way of life for millions of kids. The franchise would continue well beyond the 1990s, spanning decades with new generations of games, hundreds more Pokémon, and billions in revenue. But those first few years, 1996 through 1999, were special. That was when it all began. That was when Pokémon captured lightning in a bottle and changed entertainment forever. For those of us who were there, who traded cards at recess, who rushed home for the anime, who spent countless hours exploring Kanto on our Game Boys, we didn't just play Pokémon. We lived it. We were part of something extraordinary. We were the generation that caught 'em all.